How you guys doing? Well, I'm a little slow in sleep, so with various things going on. But yeah, so before you start to ask, that is not a typo. That is in fact what I intended my title to be. Um, and you see, I probably spent a little bit too much time thinking about my title, but I think it's important also, and I think it's a good way to start things out. And I want to talk about why it is that I picked my title first off. And I just want to say, I started talking about this earlier, but love really is a complex and confusing thing. And anyone who has any experience, which should be just about everyone, knows this. Because it's never as straightforward as like the movies and things like to make it out to be. And I when I was trying to put together my title, the original title I had for this was Learning to Love. And at one point in time, I started realizing, I'm like, okay, well, when I put learning to love down, for those of you who know grammar well, that in that instance, that makes it a verb, makes love into a verb. And then I thought, wait, what if I put down learning about love? That makes it into a noun. Love can be a noun. I could turn it into lovely. It could be an adjective. I'm going off about grammar now, and some of you are dazing off already. Um, but and I'm kind of going off on a tangent a little bit, but the point is that love can be a lot of things, even just in the English language. And I ended up settling for this because the way I see love now, after my whole journey of making this, and after just the various things that I've seen and experienced, is that love is more of a concept than anything else. So I put learning to love, because when you talk about other concepts, you talk about if you're talking about like the guitar or math or science, you say, I'm learning science, I'm learning the guitar, I'm learning this. And that's how I see love. I don't see love as this like single thing. I don't see that it's this broad encompassing thing. It's this complex concept that envelops us. And it's really complex in the Bible too. And something that really needs to be noted is that in the Bible, when we see the word love, it's a translation first off. If you didn't know that, the Bible was not originally written in English. It was written in Hebrew and Greek, and there is actually, just in the New Testament, there are at least 3 different words that they use for love. There was eros, philia, and agape. Eros being like from the Greek god of love, eros, and meaning like a sexual attraction or a passionate love. You have philia from Philadelphia, if you know the home of brotherly love. It's like a brotherly, a familiar love. But agape is a little different. It's a sacrificial love. You're giving something up. And that's a really interesting concept. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But for now, we're going to start off with the verse here. We got 1 John 4, 7 through 8. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. Whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not know God, who does not know God, because God is love. And we're straight out told in the Bible that God is love itself. God is, in a similar manner, that love is this all-encompassing concept that goes over us, that love and God are the same thing. They encompass us. They cover over us. And a great analogy that I heard about this in one of the podcasts I listened to. If you're interested, you can come up to me afterwards. I saw a whole bunch of podcasts and videos that are great and talked about the subject that I'm getting a lot of my information from. So please come up to me afterwards and ask me about them. But it talked about this analogy of a sunken boat in the ocean. And that in the sunken boat, some of the ocean is inside the boat. But the boat itself is also inside the ocean. And while the boat has a little bit of the ocean in it, the ocean has all of the boat. And in the same manner, that is how God and love is to us. We have some of God in us. We have some love in us. We're told that the Holy Spirit fills us. And it's in the same manner that we have some God and love in us, but it is also encompassing us. It has all of us in it. It's this broad concept that's over all of us, just like the boat in this ocean. And it's also a great manner I found to look at love and to look at God, is to look at God and love as almost like a light. Because you can't really touch light. Have this light come down in front of me. I can block it out of my eyes. I can't really do much to it. But so light isn't like necessarily the object I'm seeing, but light lets me see that object. It brings it into focus. And actually, I'm not going to read through all of them up here, but there's a whole bunch of Bible verses that make this comparison too between God and this light, showing us the path, showing us the way. And this is really how I view, after all this, I've started to view God and love. It's this thing that shows us things. It brings things into focus. It's not the object itself, but it's what lets us see that. Brings meaning to things. Even if love in itself isn't something that is meaningful, it brings meaning into things. It makes something meaningful. And if you actually go back to Genesis at the very beginning, Genesis 1:1, it talks about God looking into the void, and he brings light out of the void. He speaks into it. And from that light comes the animals and the boats and the land and the ocean. And you see everything comes out of this light. God in this light and this love encompassing everything. And it brings out from the void. It brings out of this foggy nothingness. And love is exactly the same way. When you truly love someone, you bring them out of the void. Because when you go throughout your daily life, you see people all over. You run into people just if you go buy an object, there's someone giving you have to give your change. You see people down the street. You see people on the subway. There's a great modern poem. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it talks about just being in a subway and having these people walk by you, like these spectral images. And that's how people are often to our lives. We see them, but we don't really see them. They're there, but they're not. But love brings them out of that darkness. It brings them out of this void, just like God did in Genesis. He brings the light and love into this, and love shows us these people. We let them see them for each of their intricacies and their delicacies. And it is that action that is so amazing, but also terrifying and dangerous and reckless. Because you see, when you bring things out of the void, there's an innate danger and a risk. As God saw, he brought the world into action, and the world betrayed him. And there's the same action when we put love into the world, when we bring these people out to it. There's an innate risk in it, and there's this pain that exists. And we're gonna come back to that in a little bit. I know I'm kind of veering off here, but there's a very important concept that you need to understand, because love and desire are not the same thing, but they're intricately connected. And when you desire something, there's kind of two real objects to a desire. There's the object that you desire itself, and kind of a fancy word here, there's a term known as the object cause, and it's basically what's getting in the way of your desire. The thing example for this would be like maybe when you're a kid, you're playing video games with your friends, and you want to win all the video games. So winning all the video games would be this object, this great desire that you have. But your friends maybe beating you in the video games, that would be the object cause. It's getting in the way of you getting your desire. In the same manner, this acts in all things that you find. Anytime you have a desire in this object, you have this thing getting in the way of it. And it's sorry. I'm sorry. I wrote myself. Can you go into the next slide? I was mentioning it. I forgot to do it. Those are those are the lines that talking about light and the darkness. I'm sorry. I kind of getting off of myself there. But yeah. And my apologies. I had to get back to where I was. No, but so that's right. You have this desire, and you have this thing getting in the way of desire. And it's a really interesting thing. This is more of a Freudian concept, if any of you are like to study psychology and all that kind of stuff, if you're interested in that, is that they actually found, and it's a very common thing, that people actually like the thing getting in the way of the thing that gets in the way of your desire, this object cause, is actually where you get the pleasure and the enjoyment from, not actually the object of your desire. And a really common example of this that people talked about is they talk about a gambler. And a gambler actually likes to lose. And that sounds weird, right? It's like they want to win, right? But it's them losing that makes them think, oh, this loss makes the winning seem so desirable, seem so amazing. So it's actually it's a weird concept that you get from this, where It's the thing getting in the way of your desire that you actually is actually what you really want. It's the hard work, the effort, and it just there's a really great episode if you've ever heard of this show, The Twilight Zone. It's a little bit of an older show, but it's there's this great episode of it called A Nice Place to Visit. And in this episode, you have this kind of lowly criminal who one day he dies. I don't know what the cause was. I don't remember, but he dies, and he goes to the afterlife, and he gets met by this man in the afterlife, and in this afterlife, everything looks the same as it did when he was alive. Everything's just as normal. He has all of his belongings, and he meets this man. He pulls out a gun and he holds it to the man. He tells him to give him his wallet, and the man's like, "All right." He gives him the wallet. There you go. And he's like, "But you know what? That's not it. You can ask for whatever you want. Why stop there?" So he tells the man, "Okay, take me to your home." And the man takes him to this big mansion with all these rooms. And the guy says, "Here you go." And he asks, "Is this is where you live?" And the man goes, No, this is where you live now." And he takes him into the home and he points to the one cabinet. He says, "Open that drawer. There's $8 million in there. That's all yours now." And the guy's like, "Oh wow, this is crazy." Like he's getting everything he could want. So he goes and he starts to go to casinos and he starts betting and he wins everything. He always wins. And he's like, "Dang, this is amazing. This is crazy." But then as time goes on, he starts to become crazy. He just becomes insane. He's like, "I just want to lose for once. I don't want to always win." So the man goes, "Okay, tell me what percentage of the time do you want to lose?" And he's like, "That's not the point. The point is I shouldn't even be in heaven. I should be in hell." And the guy replies back, "What makes you think this is heaven? This is hell." And that's just, I think that's such a great illustration of this concept, because as humans, we don't really want this final desire. We actually want the thing in the way, because when that's not there, that's not as enjoyable. And I think something that you guys might be able to understand better is, for those of you who are into sports teams, football maybe. No, yeah, I'm not really, so I don't know all that stuff. But what I've seen though, and what I understand though, is when you're watching a game and your team's playing, what is more enjoyable to you? When your team just was winning the game the entire time, they're easily winning, and they just end up winning at the end. It was just a completely easy victory. Or is it more enjoyable when you get those really close games where maybe your team's coming back from losing and is making a really quick comeback and they're being defeated for so long, or maybe it's back and forth? Isn't that a lot more entertaining? But it's weird, right? Because if you say that you get that your object of your desire, the thing that you want, is your team to win, then why do you find it more entertaining when your team starts to lose or when your team isn't having difficulties? It's because we innately want this struggle. But that brings up an issue, and it's this thing known as traumatic pleasure. It's when if you don't have this issue, if you don't have this thing getting in your way, then your body will start to unconsciously create it. You start to go after these things, and you get these. That's where you start getting these crazy things where you get like these really like rich, famous people, and they'll end up going and like stealing things even when they don't have to, or maybe they'll turn into like drugs, or maybe you'll get like people who do things that don't make sense. They'll like, you hear things like midlife crises, like they have like their life set up and established, but they go and do something that doesn't really make sense. It's because they want change. They want something to get in the way. They want a resistance. And kind of the reason I'm talking about this, two different reasons. The one I don't really have time to delve into, but if you're interested in it, you come up to me afterwards, is that Christianity is amazing because it joins these two things. It joins this object desire and this object cause, this like thing, this final desire and this thing getting in the way of it, and it joins them together into one. And it's a really amazing thing. But I don't really have time to get into that because that's confusing and weird. So if you're really interested in that, you can come up to me afterwards. But what's more important is, if we go back to this idea of agape, this sacrificial love that I spoke about earlier, and when I talked about bringing people out of the void, because when you bring someone out of the void, there is a risk and there's a danger, and it's this object cause, it's this thing that gets in the way, this effort, and it makes it dangerous, because you see, there's this right here. here's a great way to illustrate this. There's this amazing story that a rabbi told, and I found it's a great thing. And he talks about how they were seeing this young man eating a fish, and he goes up to the young man. He says, "Why are you eating that fish?" The young man says, "Well, I love the fish." And the rabbi says, "No, you don't love the fish, because if you love the fish, you wouldn't have taken it out of the water and boiled it up and ate it, right?" Makes sense, I think. And he's like, "You don't love the fish. You are fulfilling your own desires through the fish." And he says that too much love in the world is like fish love. Too much love is going out into the world and trying to satisfy your own desires with the people that you meet. You look at a person, you say, okay, they can satisfy my emotional and they can satisfy my physical desires. But you see, true love is when you're not looking to see what you can get out of it, but what you can give into it. Because when you give into a situation, when you give part of yourself to them, then, because loving yourself can come innately, but loving someone else takes time. But if you give part of yourself into them, then part of yourself is in them, and you can love them because part of them is in you. Part of you is in them. You are giving part of yourself into them, but you see, that's risky. It's not an easy thing, and it's not a painless thing either. And when I say this too, I'm not just talking about like a romantic love. I'm talking about like any type of love. If you have family, friends, when you try to put out the effort to love them, to care for them, you're giving part of yourself. You're giving your time, your effort, your money, whatever it be. You're giving part of yourself into them. And if they love you back, they give part of yourself into you. And you love each other. But it's risky. It's dangerous. It's not an easy thing. And this is where the whole idea of the object desire and object cause come into place. Because what ends up happening is that in order to maintain a relationship between a person, there has to be a constant effort, something in between. Commonly, you get things like getting to know the person constantly. If you treat the other person, you continue to get to know them. But if you reach a point where there's nothing getting in the way, and when you reach this like final desire, you see people do these ridiculous things. Like you see people commit adultery and they go off and cheat, and it's like, because it's not that there's a reason they're unsatisfied, because they got what they want, right? You would think, because you get these people who marry the person that they wanted, exactly what the situation they wanted, but they go off and do these things. It's because they've lost the effort, the thing in between, and they unhealthily create this situation. And that's why it's important to establish these obstacles yourself. And it's a weird thing to think about, but like you have to be able to understand that, like, you have to be able to constantly work to get to know the person, create these obstacles. And that's, if you I'm sorry, this is a very confusing thing, and I'm trying to explain in my time. Okay. There's another great story that there is, and it talks about the perfect gift. And a guy is trying to contemplate what it is that would be the perfect gift, and he says, okay, if you start with a normal gift, you give something to someone, they know that you gave it to them, they know what they got. It's all right, I guess, but what happens is that they give you your thanks back, and you get this pleasure back from giving them a gift. So it's not really that great of a gift. It's more of an exchange, right? Because you're getting back this thanks and this pleasure. So what if you gave an anonymous gift, right? Then they wouldn't know that you got it, so you wouldn't get back a thanks, but you would still have this kind of this pleasure, like, oh, look at me, I gave this person this gift. So it's still kind of an exchange. What if you had a gift that you didn't know you were giving it, and they didn't know they were receiving it? That's doesn't really make sense, but you see, there is a gift like this, and that's love and forgiveness. Because if you live your life in such a way that that is just how you live your life, if you live your life, a life full of love and life full of forgiveness, then you give that gift unconsciously. You don't know you're giving that gift, and they may not know you're receiving it, but part of you are giving this gift. It's not just this fish love where you're just looking for what you can get from them. You're giving this gift to them, and part of you is in them, part of them is in you. And and it becomes this unconscious thing. It's this perfect gift. And you bring them, and when you do that, you bring them out of the void. You notice their details, because when you truly love a person, you have to notice every part of them, whether that be their faults and their successes, and you have to notice who they are, but also who is their ideal image, because everyone lives in a in-between zone. We live in between who we truly are and who our ideal is. We're constantly working towards our ideal, but we're never quite there. We're never quite truly who we really are, though, either, in a weird way. But because we're always constantly changing, we're improving, we're between these spaces. And when you truly love a person, you have to recognize these things. You have to recognize what they are and who they want to be. And you have to recognize their intricacies, and you have to work to get to know them. Because when you don't recognize those things, they become an idol to you. They become this fanciful thing. They become the object desire without the object cause. There's nothing in between when you don't recognize their faults. And that's not true love. And I think a great example for this is, if you might have heard the question before, if you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Which I think is a stupid question, because if you ate one food for the rest of your life, you would start to hate it no matter what it is, right? No one wants to do that. And the idea is, because if you keep eating that food for the rest of your life, eventually you're going to know everything about it. You're going to know exactly how it tastes, like no matter what it tastes in any situation. And there's no resistance anymore. Like, the reason people like ice creams like that is because you can't eat it all the time, right? Because there's consequences if you do, and there's this thing in the way, so we love it. But if you just ate the same thing all the time, there'd be no resistance. You'd be constantly getting it. You know everything about it. And it's the same thing with a relationship. You have to acknowledge the faults of the person. You can't have this ideal image of them without having their faults and the things in the way. And I think it's amazing in the love between a parent and of their child, the way a parent loves their child, because they do this instinctually. You'll see this, where a parent knows the faults of their child. They know that they're not perfect. They know that they will make mistakes, but they love them completely anyways, and they're perfect to the parent. The child is perfect anyways, even in their imperfections, they're perfect, because they recognize all of their being. They recognize who they are and their ideal image that they want to present to people. They recognize all of that, and they see them for all that. And they see both the object and the object cause. They see this ultimate desire and this effort, and they see everything in between. And there's this amazing quote by Jacques Lacan. It's 2 slides down if we want to get to it. I'm going to have to skip the one thing. There we go. It's love is giving something you don't have to someone who doesn't want it. And what that basically means is you're giving your lacks, your insecurities, your faults. You're giving this to someone else. This is your gift. But they don't really want that, right? You don't want someone else's faults and their insecurities. You want them to be able to support you. But when you truly love someone, they accept that, and they give their faults and their insecurities back to you. And that is what love really is. It's being able to have both of these things. And it's amazing. Okay. So, leading out here, there's really 3 things that I really want you guys to get. So even if you weren't listening to the rest of that, this is fine. Because a lot of this is kind of this really weird, broad stuff. But there's 3 things I really, really want you guys to understand when you get out of here. I want you to be able to bring people out of the void. I want you to notice people and to love them. Because sometimes it's just nice to be noticed. It's nice to be brought out by a person. See them for their faults and see them for their ideals. Don't just see one or the other. And just bring them out of their void. The next thing I want to bring up is actually in this next slide here. It's this amazing verse. I encourage you to read this, and my other verses I put up there too. It's Romans 14. And if I remember correctly, I'm having some memory issues right now, but if I remember correctly, this is right when Paul was discussing people's arguments over certain meats being unclean and certain foods being unclean. And he was basically saying that all things are clean in God. And he says, one person's faith allows them to eat anything, but another's whose faith is weak eats only vegetables. The one who eats everything must not treat with contempt the one who does not. And the one who does not, excuse me, and the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted them. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? To their own master, servant. To their own master's servants stand or fall, they will stand, for the Lord is able to make them stand. And this is amazing because what this is saying is that each person to their own we have our own intricacies and we have our own beliefs and faiths and we have all these things. But God has accepted that, and who are we to judge someone else's servant? Because we are all God's servants, and we respond and we answer to God. We don't answer to each other. Although we are there to support each other and we can show each other our faults, we're not there to judge each other. And here, let's continue on the next slide. We have one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special, so does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God. And whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives for ourselves alone, and none of us dies for ourselves alone. If we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So, whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life, so that he may be the Lord of both the dead and the living. Whew. That is so powerful. He died and came back so he can rule over with us when we're dead, when we die for him, when we live for him. He's over charge of that, both of those. We are his servants, both life and death. And in that, what truly matters, and I love this section because what this shows is what that truly matters is no matter what you do in life, no matter the little changes, and if you have slightly different changes in theology, if you have slightly different actions, what truly matters is that each of those actions, each of those beliefs, each of those thoughts are given up to God, that they're for the Lord. And when they're for the Lord, then the Lord rules over you. He's the final person that judges you. No one else on earth is the one to judge you. He is. So if you give up every action, every thought, and every word to the Lord, then you're good. He's your master over life and death. There's no one else you have to answer to but him. And I think that's so powerful. And I think the reason I read this is because I think an important step in loving people and loving each other is being able to admit that you might be wrong. Being able to understand that when you go into a conversation with someone else, understand that you have your faults, that you might be wrong about your beliefs, about your views, and also being able to question the other side, question other people. How do you appear to them? What it is, because when you view this other side, whether you talk about political views or religious views, when you view this other side of the argument, you always are like, oh, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to deal with this. It's like, and you almost get that. I swear, I'm not a big arguer a lot of times. But have you ever, whenever you see these people who are arguing or have these strong beliefs that are opposite of yours, have you ever thought to ask how you appear to them? Because you know how they appear to you. You see them in these your lens of your beliefs and your understandings. But if you can just ask how you appear to them and understand what it is that they see, you don't necessarily have to change what you believe. I mean, we saw right here in Romans 14 that no matter what we believe and what we say, as long as we're doing and saying everything for the Lord, he is our final judge. So you don't necessarily have to change what you believe to match another person. But maybe you can see something new, experience something new, and see them for who they truly are. Maybe you can learn to love a little more, care a little more, or just be a little more. Because God commands us to love with all of our heart, our soul, and our might. He says there's it's such a great verse because the word strength in that verse, they found it. The actual Greek word translates. Linguists say it's probably the best translation of it is muchness. Give with all your muchness, however much you have at that point in time, however much, it's just a little bit. Even if it's just a wee little bit. Maybe I only have a little bit of muchness in me right now, but I will give that. I will give that with love. I'll give that with caring and understanding, and I will move forward. I will bring these people out of the void, and I will understand that I might be wrong. I will understand that I appear different to them than I think I might appear, and I will learn to love them. Because love is giving part of yourself to them and accepting them for who they are, accepting part of them back. Thank you. I forgot to pray. I'll do that now. I do want to pray though, so we're gonna do that. Not quite, Cody. My apologies. No, but I do want to pray because I want to pray over all you guys. 'Cause I love you guys so much. That's such a powerful word. Love. Oh God, how we love you, God, and how you love us, God. You showed us first how to love, and we will love and live in that image, God. Let us live by love and learn by love, God. Let us show other people what it means to love, God. Oh, God. I just pray that we can learn the power of love and the strength and the courage it takes to give up part of yourself, to accept the parts of others that maybe you don't want to get and that you don't want to see. And just learn what it means to truly be. Thank you, God, for the amazing gift that you have given us. That is this love and grace. Amen.